Hi, Geekscapists. Welcome to a brand new Geekscape podcast. I'm Jonathan London, your host. If this is your first Geekscape, strap yourselves in for some pop culture talk, movies, video games, comic books, TV, all of that pop culture that you can fit under your noggin in about an hour. I really appreciate you listening to Geekscape. Maybe this is your first, maybe you've been with us for 18 years. Either way, I love doing the show. Even when it gets super, super stressful. I'm sorry I didn't get you an episode last week. I was actually on my baby moon. I am entering fatherhood at warp speed. It is exhilarating, frightening, crazy, and you Geekscapists are here for the ride. When I started doing Geekscape 19 years ago when I started podcasting, I didn't know that I was creating my own weekly Truman Show. And for the most part, I've been here every week, sometimes twice a week with you folks. And last week I was down in, I was here and I balanced whether or not to do a Geekscape with you guys. And ultimately I was leaving in a day for Heidi and I's baby moon, and it just wasn't going to be a good show. And I knew that I had Adam Nimoy here this week, and he's got a brand new book called The Most Human. Adam is Leonard Nimoy's son. You know him as the popular Spock actor from Star Trek. I mentioned that I was having him on the show to my father, and he said, "Oh, I actually know him from Mission Impossible." My father was a big Mission Impossible TV fan, and Adam's here on the show to talk about this book. And to say that the book came at a it's just the coincidence is it feels cosmic in the fact that I have Adam as a guest. I had started orchestrating Adam coming on the show earlier, but it didn't happen until now. I'm completely freaking out. I've spent the last 2 days building baby stuff, like a changing table. The baby comes early August, a week, hopefully after Comic-Con, hopefully not during Comic-Con. I'm going to come down to Comic-Con and be at our booth for Wednesday, the preview night, and then I'm going to dip back to LA and become a dad. To say that I'm flying by the seat of my pants right now, more so than I ever have in the Truman Show-esque Geekscape years, is an understatement. So here comes this book, The Most Human, from Adam, and he's talking about his relationship with his father. My father and I love my father dearly, and I'm super proud of him. And I'm reading this book on Father's Day weekend, on my baby moon, and it chronicles Adam's relationship with his father Leonard. And the relationship is, we'll talk to Adam about it, but it wasn't an easy relationship. And this is a conversation I've also had with Walter Koenig, who I befriended a few weeks ago, about a month ago, and we trade the texts, and it's not easy. And I'm scared of fatherhood, and there are parts in this book that were heartbreaking for me as I navigate my changing relationships, not just with myself as a father, but with my father as he becomes a grandfather, and things like boundaries and our expectations of each other and communication. And sometimes it's not always good. And I'm reading this book, and it is both exhilarating and it's rewarding, and there are parts of success and there are parts that feel like failures. And I got to tell you, if you go into this book as a Star Trek fan, you're going to love it. If you go into this book without knowing anything about Star Trek, take the Star Trek out of this. This is still an incredible human book, an incredible human story. If you read this just as a history of Los Angeles, something that I'm passionate about, you're going to get a great 50, 60, 70-year history of the west side of Los Angeles, of some of the places from a bygone era that just aren't there anymore, that Adam grew up amongst. So this is the book. We're going to talk about it here in a bit. And just a quick shout out while I'm doing shout outs. Shout out to my dad. I'm super proud of him. Last week was the 80th anniversary of the Normandy invasion. And my father, he's gone from being a lawyer, which he was because he had 3 boys and a daughter, and he had to start making money. He wanted to be a writer his whole life. He only became a writer after his law career, and he's a military writer. He writes fiction about World War II. And he went this past week, he went to Normandy and he spoke on the beaches of Normandy at the American Cemetery. This is incredible. This is the Brittany American Cemetery Memorial. President Biden was 90 miles down the beach. And so my father gave a speech as part of this whole presentation as part of the 80th anniversary of Normandy. And then the next day, I think he and Biden switched places. My father goes 90 miles down the beach, does another presentation. And there were people who came for the second day of my father speaking. So I'm super proud of my dad. Happy Father's Day. And yeah, so thank you. I don't know why I'm thinking, but man, Dad, I'm proud of you, and I don't always say it. So here we are on Geekscape. Happy Father's Day. I know I told you on Father's Day, but I'm saying it again on Geekscape for posterity. I'm proud of you. Okay, let's get this Geekscape going. I'm going to run the credits. We'll be back with Adam Nimoy, and we're going to talk all about The Most Human, which is going on all of your Amazon lists right now. There's a little bit of a hiccup right there. I accidentally dropped myself out of the studio during the theme song. I went to press the button on the theme song, and my grubby mitts touched the back button on your browser, on my browser, and then suddenly I'm sitting there outside of the studio. I jumped back in the studio, I had to jump back into the feed. If you're listening on audio, you're like, no, forget it. It's all clean here because Jonathan cleaned it up. But if you're watching this live on YouTube, Facebook, Twitch, or where else are we? LinkedIn, do they call it X? You guys would be like, what the heck just happened? All right, let's bring Adam onto the show. He's the author of this brand new book, The Most Human, and you are all going to go to Amazon right now and add it to your reading list. Maybe you're going to get a Kindle version, but let's talk about the book with Adam. Adam, how are you?
I'm great, Jonathan.
You got me nervous, man. I was sincere about what I said about this book. I can't believe that this book fell in my lap at this time. I'm really going through it. Is there daddy brain? Is that a thing?
Well, it is synchronicity for you. Yes, this is good timing. Your child will become a teenager in the blink of an eye, and that's when you're going to really need to refer to some of the lessons I learned the hard way.
Yeah, the hard way. I don't even know where to begin on this one, Adam, because my father came recently to help us shop for things like cribs. My father wants to help in any way he can, and he was here in March or April, only for a couple days, and we went shopping for whatever the baby might need, and they want to be helpful, but then that's when we start realizing that some of the stresses we have, and maybe some of the conversations we haven't had over the last 40 years, start to, I don't know. It just feels like sometimes I'm at an inflection point, both with my father and as a father right now. And then I read this book, and there's a scene, I'm talking like it's a movie, but there's a story in it where, and I've been guilty of this with my father, and I don't even know if it's something to be guilty of, but you're with a therapist, and your therapist points out what I think I might have lost Adam, and I want him to hear this, so let's just hold on. He may have just done what I did, but I know here live he's fallen out of the room. Let me see if I can get him back, because I was going somewhere with that. We are having some tech difficulties on Geekscape, but I'm glad that you guys are here. I'm looking on the live room, and there are a few of you guys watching. Lasari Trek says, I just want to say I always wanted to meet Mr. Spock, and I loved your documentary on your father. Oh, man, that is a perfect companion piece to this book. I would love to read that. Let me work on getting Adam back. I'm opening up my email, see if everything's okay with this. Let's see. Nothing we're mad. Let's see. Let's give it a few minutes on Adam. The comments are clearly open. Throw them up if you have any questions for Adam as he works on returning to the show. The daddy brain thing is real, guys. I have been short. I think another reason I didn't want to do Geekscape, been a little short with people. Don't mean to be. I try and be the nice jocular guest or host that everybody likes, and sometimes it's just been tough. I've been trying to keep it together, especially with San Diego Comic-Con coming up. We've got 8 people from Geekscape coming down to be a part of the booth, to be part of the press. We have people signing. We're putting together the signing schedule. There's just a lot going on, and I don't know how much bandwidth I've got, but I'm trying. Let me see how we can get Adam back on the show. They definitely have my cell, and let me see what else is going on. It was working perfectly, and then maybe he hit the back button, and I wish I had like a is it wrong to say like what the Indian chief graphic that whenever at the end, I mean this is before my time, but when my parents were kids probably, the TV, when it would go off the air, you would end up with like that little graphic of do you guys know what I'm talking about? Let's see. Whenever they were off the air, Indian chief off air graphic. This is from the TV. Yeah, here it is. It was a test pattern for the TV shows, the TV networks. And is this what we're going to do? Let's see. Here we go. Let me see. Is this what we'll do? We got Sarai Trek saying like, "Oh, I'll wait." That's great. I'm glad you'll wait. Let me see what else we got, because this might be a big technical difficulty. But here we go. Let's do we do this? Is this what we do? Is anybody familiar with this? You guys know what this is? This is probably like the 50s, 60s, whenever a TV station would go off the air. It would be like they would be playing this thing, and it's literally called an RCA Indian head test pattern. And this is what they would play whenever they would have, or they'd be off the air, because there's only so much programming early in the TV days. They weren't like us, where it's 24/7 and you have to pick which shows to watch, which shows not to watch, when you're sitting there being like, oh, do I want to watch The Acolyte? Do I want to watch this TV show? There's a Star Wars show, there's a Marvel show, there's the X-Men 97, there's a million things going on, and I don't think we're ever going to see this graphic again. Listeners are like, what the heck are you talking about? Just get your guest back. Well, I'm trying, folks, but the ball is in their court. I am trying. Adam was perfect. He was here. He was talking. He was great. And then suddenly, I think like a computer died or something. So maybe he's waiting for the laptop to plug back in. I honestly don't know. Jason Elliott, thank you for your feedback. He says, you will do fine as a dad, but be prepared to make some mistakes. Okay, par for the course. Par for the course. Okay. Jennifer Zhang, who's amazing. Love Jennifer Zhang. She says, hi, Jaylon. She's the only person who calls me Jaylon. And that goes back from the comic book days where we used to host the comic book show over at Twin Galaxies. She says, hey, hi, Jaylon. Congratulations. She says, I can't wait to meet Jonathan London, Father Edition. Neither can I, but then I can. We were in the grocery store last night, and we were checking out, and one of the women who worked there just came up to Heidi. Keep in mind, Heidi's at 32 weeks. So we got a little bit to go. Early August is the due date. And this woman who works at Ralph's is like, I can tell. It's like Peruvian flute music starts playing, but she goes, I can tell that you are due. In 2 weeks, you will have your baby. It definitely freaked Heidi out because it's a little early. And And so I was like, hey, can we just get a bag, please? We're not coming back to this house. All right, Adam is back. We did not need to delay too much, and it's all good. Let's bring Adam back on the show. Adam, technical
Jonathan,
difficulties, no
so
problem.
sorry. I totally crashed.
Don't worry about it. Don't
I,
worry about it.
I don't
I
know what
love it.
happened.
I love it. I went on about it. This is what I threw up. Do you remember this, Adam? This is me. This is a little before my time. I was born in '78. I threw up the Indian headdress
Yeah,
off-air symbol,
yeah,
and I told the Geekscapists about it because that was a little bit before my time. But as I said in the intro, this is a book also about like the history of LA. But what I was telling you was the chapter in your book where your father is told by the therapist, you're asking for your help, for his help. You're asking your father for his help, and that is not easy to do. And as you become an adult, that is really not easy to do, to
yeah,
ask your father for help. And as your father is successful, as your father was, my father was successful, asking him to help, almost hat in hand, and then having them say no. And then you took your father to therapy to talk about it
yeah,
with a therapist.
yeah,
And he says, well, if I help my son out here, everybody off the street is going to ask for my help.
yeah,
And the therapist says, but this is your son. And it must have been embarrassing for him. But he, without a word, he gets up and just walks out.
yeah. That's what happened. Well, I mean, you have to understand it wasn't for me. It was for the organization I was
Right.
working for. It was a charitable organization. Yeah, asking him to help contribute to that organization. Yeah,
And one that he had already agreed to provide some charity to, and then it shifted when you found an alternate for Regal location. There was it's a building in LA, and in Geekscape it says I read this book, The Most Human. I find myself Googling whether or not these places still exist. And the place where Adam is what we're talking about now is a historic building from the 20s that was part of the early UCLA village. And then when UCLA, and I Googled it and I said, well, there's a building named after it there now, but the original building, you helped have it relocated to little like, Beverly and Fairfax district, the Jewish
right.
district
Yeah,
there.
yeah.
And that's a pretty big ordeal in '85. You wanted your father's help, but what do you think? How did you feel when because you'll do these things in the book where, and I like this, Adam. This is not a criticism. I'll read it, and I'll say, wait, what was the culmination of that, right? Because you
Uh-huh,
talk about your father getting up out of that therapy session,
uh-huh, uh-huh.
because it is embarrassing. I mean, he was pointed out like, hey, this isn't just somebody off the street. This is your son,
Uh-huh.
and that is really hard for him to realize
Yeah,
that he had put you in a basket with the rest of with everybody else. You're
yeah,
his son.
yeah.
And as sobering as that is, he gets in the car and he drives off, and you leave us, the reader, with that. What do you want us? Why do you leave us with the distance? I know you don't want to lead us on a leash, but
Yeah.
you acknowledge that you do that a few times in the book.
Well, yeah, I mean, there are some instances in the book that I talk about where I had some issues with my dad, where he was not really being very fatherly with me. And it was and this is kind of just the space that we had between us. We just saw things very differently. We related to each other in a very kind of tenuous way. And I think he just had trouble understanding the role of what being a parent was all about. It was not something that he was used to. It was not something that his parents were not great models for that. They were not affectionate. They were not emotive. They were not demonstrative, my dad would say. And, when my dad asked them for help when he came to California, they said no.
Hmm.
And that was kind of his mindset, really. I mean, he's just, there's a lot to be said for standing on your own feet and, doing, making your own way and having your own. And by that time I was practicing law. I had my own career. I wasn't asking him for a bailout. I was asking him to contribute to a charitable organization that I was working for, and which he seemed to support the idea of what we were doing, which was to save this historical building in Westwood from demolition. So that was just kind of the way he worked. He just didn't. And I talk about other situations with him where he was just not very loving, frankly, and it was very challenging for me. All this turned around later on in life with him, and I'm really grateful for that. And I do say I've got to be very careful about this because fans don't want to hear about, you know, uh, dirty laundry. It's not mommy dearest. I'm not going through the litany of stuff that happened with him that upset me or pissed me off. I mean, I'm very careful to say, look, he didn't have very good modeling when he was younger. That's number one. And number two, I was always proud of the guy, no matter what. I mean, even when we were at odds with one another, like this incident over the El Greco, I would still show up for my dad. I still loved my dad. I was still incredibly proud of the work he had done and what he had accomplished coming out to LA with nothing. So that was I'm just kind of like illustrating what his mindset is without really judging him, pointing a finger at him. I'm just saying this is what I've been dealing with, and I got to find a way to get through to this guy because it was very difficult.
One thing that I love about this book as well is it's a testament to both therapy and it's a testament to self-help groups. Both your father later in life was in Alcoholics Anonymous, and then you early on. I mean, from the beginning chapter, Geekscape is you come right out and talk about your battles with substance abuse, mainly marijuana and pot, which a lot of people think is recreational, but you gave us that chapter about Cherokee in Hollywood, the comic book store on Cherokee in Hollywood, and how it was only 2 instances where he took you out to the comic book store in Hollywood and to spend a Saturday, Sunday with his son,
Uh-huh.
and how starved you were. And so by the time you get to high school and a lot of that stuff is floating around, you threw yourself into, your friends and hung out and you got heavy into the pot. By the time you get to Berkeley, you're really into it. And then you introduced that big difference early on where he thinks of John Lennon as almost someone responsible for a perversion of society.
Uh-huh.
And John Lennon's a hero of yours. So early on in an early chapter, you put that kind of demarcation line between the two of you.
Uh-huh.
But then you start to put these parallels together with your own recovery in his. What did you learn from him as he was going through yours, as he was going through his, and you, as you were going through yours? Did you in any way positively impact his journey?
Well, yeah, I mean, the difference is that my dad was sober, but he was not very deep into working a program of recovery.
Mm-hmm.
That is the difference. My dad went sober long before probably 6 or 7 years before I went sober. And he did kind of lead the way. But the fact of the matter is, he was not a regular meeting goer and he wasn't working the steps. He wasn't reading the big book. He wasn't getting a sponsor. He didn't have sponsees. He's not that invested in the program. And there are a lot of guys like him, and that's fine. He was just not drinking. But sometimes that can be a more difficult situation because he just was still difficult. Nothing else changed other than the fact that he stopped drinking. So I had a very different approach to 12-step recovery. I was very much integrated into the program. I love the program. I wanted to learn something from the program. And so I went to meetings regularly and did all those things. It's a program of action. You got to do stuff, to get out of the mindset of having an obsession to be high every day, which I had that obsession for 30 years. I just wanted to be high all the time. So it was a very different approach, and I just think it was a great benefit to me that I had some tools of recovery to figure out what to do with him, to deal with him. I was in Al-Anon, and Al-Anon it's a group. It's the same as 12-step recovery as well for people who have somebody in the family who is alcoholic or has an addiction problem. My qualifier was my dad initially, but my mother was also another qualifier. She had a real pill problem the last years of her life. So, we benefited from that, and I was able to use those tools to finally figure out a way to reach out to my dad. Look, you can't go head, toe to toe with Leonard Nimoy. It's just too powerful. And I thought I could. I thought I had a lot of self confidence, and I made it through college. I made it through law school. I had a law career. I thought, I can go toe to toe with Leonard Nimoy. Wrong, completely wrong. It was just caused more conflict between us, and to the point where we were estranged from one another. And it was, using the tools of 12-step recovery and having other people tell me to go make an amends to my dad, which I was not going to do. I mean, I needed other people to guide me. I needed input because I had no clue how to reach out to my dad.
Yeah, and there's some beautiful chapters in this book where you discover the bookstore on the West Side. Your relationship with Justin. You reconnect with one of your friends who from high school, who was one of the people that your
Mhm.
father didn't want you to be hanging around with, and then you all kind of create your own meetings there. And I think one of the most beautiful parts of the book, Geekscape, is, and yes, if you're a Star Trek fan, you're going to enjoy this book. You will. But if you're, I think the title, The Most Human, if you're just a human who's had struggles, you're going to enjoy this book. And I don't mean struggles like, Geekscape, as you know, that I've been straight edge my whole life. I don't drink, I don't do drugs. But it doesn't mean I can't relate to Adam and his struggles to connect with his kids, to connect with his father. And the lessons you've learned, the sequence where your son Jonah won't get out of the ocean, and because he wants to keep surfing with his friends before class, but he's kind of doesn't have that long of a leash with the school because he's been late to class too many times, and he insults you in front of your friends, and you finally in front of his friends, and you finally just have to have a talk with him. You show an emotion to him that your father did not show to you.
Yeah,
Can you talk about that? Because I think,
sure.
because at that point you had gone through some failures, and if you had your father gone through some failures, I mean, because the second Spock hits, he's just hit with success, success, success. It's fame, fame, fame. You know, he buys the house in Westwood, et cetera, et cetera. Was and I don't, I mean this, I think you know how I mean this word, but did failures professionally, personally, is that what kind of led you to being a better father?
Well, failures are good. You know, it's good to fail. I think it's a part of growing. Leonard had plenty of his own mishaps, plenty, that he himself had admitted in his autobiography, I Am Spock. Um, I think what made me a better father was just having different look. You know, I was a very different person than my dad. I was born in Southern California, pop culture, the 60s, all this great stuff going on, this music, this great TV stuff going on, the comic books, the concerts. My kids were that way too. They were born in Southern California. We were very much alike just to begin with. This is what I try to point out is my father and I were doomed from the beginning because he's a guy who grew up in the Depression with Russian immigrant parents. They were actually from Ukraine, but they
Mm-hmm.
considered themselves Russian. You know, they were very tough on him. He had to hustle all his life to generate income. Leonard was all about jobs and getting and generating cash one way or another. And even when Star Trek hit, he was all about getting a recording career going and doing personal appearances and then the photography books and the poetry and Leonard was all about generating income. And and his priorities were different. He says this. He was all about career to begin with. It was his top three priorities were career, career, and career when I was growing up, and my mother took care of the family. I had a different mindset from that to begin with. So I think that alone was going to make things a little more successful with my own kids. I mean, I did have a career and it was an important priority to me, but so was raising my kids and having a family, and being involved with them. Also, just the fact I liked hanging out with them. I'd go out in the back studio with Jonah and we jammed because he learned how to play drums at a very early age, age 8, and I had my Fender Telecaster and we just rock out back there. We just naturally loved hanging out together. And with Maddie, I just, loved hanging out with her and shopping with her and helping her with her homework. And I loved their friend. I was very involved with them just to begin with. Yet still, I made my own mistakes. Yet still, they found reasons to really be pissed off at me. That's inevitable. But when we had conflict, there was much more resolution, much more going back to feelings of connection, things that I never had with my dad. When we got in a fight about something, it was just devastating, and there was no resolution. There's no I'm sorries. There's no I love yous. There's nothing. There's just go back to our corners, his room, my room, and he'll drink and I'll take a hit.
Were you scared of him? Did you develop a fear of him? At what
Yeah,
age?
I had plenty of fear of Leonard. Yeah, Leonard was definitely he was to be feared,
For the
definitely.
veracity at which he would lay into you.
Yeah, well, it's just that he's unbending. He was just a very single-minded, tough guy, and he had to be. This is what I'm saying. I give him credit. I have to give him a break. The guy came out here with nothing, zero, no help, no nothing to make his way in Hollywood. He worked in a pet shop. He serviced fish tanks and set them up in doctors' office. That should be a big. By the way, that was a big fad in the '60s in LA. Go to a doctor's office. There's a fish tank. Why? Because everybody gets calmer when they watch the fish swimming. He sold refrigerators. He drove a taxi cab. He used to service these gumball machines. We'd have sacks of like trinkets that he put in there. I mean, the guy did everything. He just did everything. He was just a hustler. And I didn't do any of that. I didn't need to.
Right.
This is my point: is that he was just dogged, determined to get where he needed to go. And even though he got there, he didn't all of a sudden switch it off and go, "I'm going to be warm and gentle and fuzzy, Leonard. I have a couple of kids now, and I'm going to switch everything up." And my career, yeah, I mean, I'm making enough now. It's fine. That was never Leonard. Leonard was just drive, drive, drive. My mother used to say, as hard as he was on me, he was always hardest on himself, and that is the truth.
When you leave the house on Clarkson Street and your marriage is dissolving, another thing that the Geekscapists have experienced through my eyes during the course of this Truman Show show, and the rift grows between you and your kids, and what were did you keep it secret from your father for as long as you could that your marriage was dissolving?
It wasn't like I was keeping it secret. I was simply not talking to him, so I didn't call him.
Right.
Yeah, I just didn't. I didn't need him in my business. I didn't reach out to him for that kind of thing. I mean, I called him on his birthday, on Father's Day. I call him on my birthday, or on holidays. I check in with him, but I wasn't going to call him about personal stuff. It was just not something I want, because he wasn't the kind of warm and fuzzy guy I would go to for help. Mm-hmm. That completely switched around when my wife got sick, which is the latter part of the book. My wife got very ill, and my dad was the go-to guy. He was just present for me and just there. And that's the miracle of recovery. That's reconciliation. That's the point of the book, that people should have hope. It is possible, even though I had, an incredible odds against ever really figuring him out. Bernie Francis's business manager said something like that I needed to figure out a way to get through to him, and my dad needed to figure out a way to just accept me for who I was. Because we were and Bernie was cut from that cloth too. Bernie was the same, born and raised in Coney Island during the Depression. So, it's just, it's a story. The point of the book is that it's a success story in our relationship. And I want to emphasize that. It is a positive message that you can repair these relationships. We live in a polarized world. You might want to think about starting at home, because I hear anecdotally all the time about, sons and dads and their problems, or daughters and mothers, or whichever. There's just dysfunction. It's common, and this was just a way that my dad and I figured it out. It was to my dad's credit that when I did, appeal to him and I reached out to him by making amends to him, he was like, "Yeah, let's do it. I'm ready, and thank you, and I'm going to let go of my stuff now. I'm going to take Bernie Francis's advice, his business manager, and just accept you for who you are and love you." And he was relieved, and I was relieved, and then boom, before you know it, I'm over there all the time for Shabbat dinner, and hanging out with him, and repairing the relationship between him and my kids. Everything changed. It was transformative, and that is what we need to emphasize here. Yeah, Leonard was a tough cookie. There's no doubt about it. It's what made him so successful, and he was a tough father. It was very difficult to deal with, but things turned around for us in a big way.
What were the phrases? Like, if the Geekscapists are listening to this, and maybe they want to knock on the door, they want to have that conversation with the people in their lives, they don't have the tools, and sometimes it takes you years, a lifetime, to develop those tools. Like, it took Leonard a long time into his older years to develop those tools. It took a life event, like your wife getting sick, to develop those, to overcome those boundaries. What were how do you even start with that? Does that make sense? Like, maybe I'm asking for myself.
No, well, I know. Here's the deal. You do not need to be an addict or an alcoholic.
Oh no, he froze. Adam froze right as he was giving us the knowledge. Oh my goodness. Did you guys catch that? I'm still ticking up and live, but Adam has frozen. So another technical difficulty on that one. Geekscape is I'm in the midst of this one. Let me see what I can do. Let's give him. He's probably going to restart, but let's remember. Geekscape help me out here, Geekscape. He was about to say, and Neil, I'm with you, man. Neil Brooke Johnson, who's a wonderful filmmaker in his own right, just says this is riveting stuff. Let me. Yeah, I'm riveted too. I gotta hear what advice Adam has on his end. So let me work on that one. Okay, he's restarting. So right Trek just from Facebook just said this is a cliffhanger for sure. We are battling technical difficulties. Maybe it's Khan. Maybe Khan just doesn't want us to learn the tools of interpersonal contact. Yeah, but we're gonna get Adam back on here to finish that thought. But Geekscape help me if you're watching this live on Facebook, Twitch, YouTube. Help me remember where we left off real quick. He was about to tell us some of the tools to bridge that gap because I feel like I'm gonna need those here in the coming months. Not that things are bad. Like I can talk to my dad about anything. It's just sometimes dudes just sometimes I you think you're aligned, you think you're in parallel, but there's just you're a couple. My dad told me something when I don't know if I've shared this with you guys. My dad told me a story, or he told me something, and you guys can fact check it. Fact check my dad if you'd like. But when my marriage was falling apart, he was reassuring me, and I would ask myself a million times, what could I have done? Why did my feelings change? Why did this stuff fall apart? And did we not communicate enough? Did we not course correct? I think about this a lot. Do you not course correct the relationships in your life? And he said that when man landed on the moon, the math to take people from Earth, propel them into space, and you had to do the math pretty exact, or else you're flying into vacuum and you're gone. Right? If you miss the moon, it's going to be rough. My father told me that from the calculations to get man to the moon, to them landing on the moon, the original calculations, they were only on that course for a small percentage of it, like something like in the teens. The majority of that mission to the moon was human course correction. And I feel sometimes in my relationships now, having taken some real zingers in my relationship, some that just won't be repaired in this lifetime, that course correction is the ultimate I think tool in just constant conversation, dialogue, communication, and fixing those relationships so that you end up getting to the same goal. All right, we are wrought with technical difficulties, but it's okay. Adam's back. And Adam, I got the Geekscapists to keep us on point. They said, it's okay. This is all great. People were saying this is riveting stuff. This is a cliffhanger for sure. And Neil Johnson says it was how he finally got to communicate and reconcile and what made the difference. This is what we were talking about. I'm sure he knows where he was before it cut out. And that's what we were talking about. Like, what were the tools? What were some of the things that you use to reconcile? And I'm thinking about people who are maybe listening or watching. Like, what are the things that you finally have to overcome? What do you tell yourself in those moments?
Well, what I was trying to point out was that you don't need to be an addict or an alcoholic to be in recovery. Everybody's recovering from something, some traumatic event in their life. The 12-step recovery are tools to use to help you deal with difficult relationships, difficult situations. Don't have to be an addict, don't have to be an alcoholic. Go to an Al-Anon meeting, go to a 12-step meeting. That's my advice. It'll really turn your perspective around on how to deal with people. It's patience, tolerance, acceptance, loving kindness, It is not reacting. It's, for me, the big part of my recovery is I try not to react to stuff anymore. And I have relapses. I do it all the time. Some guy on the phone was trying to sell me something. I was just trying to cancel a credit card, and he kept trying to sell me another credit card. Well, the one I have here doesn't have annual fees. You'll get cash back. No, dude, I just want you to cancel the credit. It happens all the time. And it's we have a lot of road rage here in LA. People need to calm down, and there's a lot of tools to do that. Count to 10, count to 20, restrain of pen and tongue, taking contrary action, doing the exact opposite of what you think you should be doing, which is what I did with my dad. It was like, there's no way I'm going to make an amends for my dad. And they told me to do the opposite of that. And I did it.
Wow.
Letting go and giving it over to your higher power. These are all things we learn in recovery. Anybody can go. People should go and learn something about the tools of recovery. I've been in therapy most of my life, and it's been very helpful. But until I went to 12-step meetings, I didn't know what to do with my old man. I had no clue.
And believe it or not, Geekscape, I went with a friend of mine to a 12-step meeting. And again, like, this is somebody I've had no substance abuse. I just, my older brother, as you all know, was killed by a drunk driver when I was in high school. And I said, that's it. I'm not going to ever touch that substance at all. That being said, a friend thought it would be beneficial to see how an organization like that works, how people volunteer and give of themselves in an organization like that. And I did. I found it incredible, and I found it inspiring. And I think that one thing that I butt up against quite a bit is the subjugation of ego. As, like you're saying, just being able to step outside of yourself long enough. And again, that's the count to 10. That's the don't react. And you write about that in your book quite a bit. Mm-hmm. Sometimes it's just hard to not be rooted in that ego enough to just fire off, even if it's somebody on a credit card. But usually it's a little more personal than that and a little bit more long-standing than that. What did you learn from writing the book? Because sometimes I'm reading this book and I'm like, I love this guy. Adam seems like a fully cooked egg. Like, I'm reading this, and again, like I said, I'm reading this at quite the inflection point for myself, becoming a dad and this and that, and freaked out of my mind. I'm scared out of my mind, brother, completely. And then I read this, and I'm like, okay, he's been through the fires, even like substitute teaching, which I had to go to, right? And sitting in a high school, feeling like you're the biggest loser in the world. Your daughter in this chapter even sees you. Are you out of your mind? Substitute teaching at your daughter's high school? That has got to be, like, how did you even walk in the front door, Adam? That's got to be frightening.
Well, it was a great experience. I was really looking forward to it. I always wanted to teach.
Was she?
Was she looking forward to it? No. I mean, the fact is, I think she was very grateful to have me close by. I took her home every day. I got her to school on time. She was never in my class. Her friends were in my class. And she would diss me in front of her friends. That was fine. It was just look, she's a teenage girl, Jonah was a teenage boy. It gets trickier at that age. It gets super tricky. They were mad at me. I was splitting up with their mom. They were very mad at me about that. We just celebrated Father's Day together with their mother and her significant other. Which was coincidentally would have been our anniversary. We forgot this. It was our anniversary. We would have been married 39 years. We got to 18.
You and Nancy?
Yeah, but we spent the last 20 years, close together. And she lives in the neighborhood, and I'm really tight with her. Her significant other is Bob, the bass player. He's in the book. And we're all close, and we all hang out together, and everybody gets along. And that's the way it should be. Everyone should just freaking get along. But it's not easy, you have to have tools. You've got to really be very careful of this stuff. You're going to find out later on. There's a couple of times where my dad, we started going down the path that we used to go down. And I was like, no, I'm not going to do this. I'm not going to take him on. All I did was apologize. I said, look, Dad, I don't remember.
He would bait you.
Well, he would just say, well, what happened when the blah, 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 blah,
right.
blah. And I go, Dad, honestly, I don't remember. I don't know what I was thinking. All I can say is I apologize for my part in it. Really, sincerely, I apologize. I can't answer. I just don't even remember, what was going on. Why did you blah, 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 blah? I don't remember. I don't know, and I'm sorry. I really am. Sorry I hurt your feelings. And I would never say to my dad, well, what about the time you did that? Because, there's no buts, there's no ifs, there's no but in an amends. I don't wait for him to make an amends to me. His amends to me is taking care of me when my wife is very sick.
Yeah.
And that's good. We call that a living in amends. Look, it's all 12-step recovery. It's pretty simple stuff, but you got to go, practice it. It takes a while. And I still have emotional relapses. I'm not gonna drink or use. I mean, the obsession is gone, and it's just one day at a time. But I'm pretty sure today I am gonna get through it clean and sober. I'm 20 years clean and sober now,
Wow.
and I'm pretty sure I'm not going to use today, and most likely not tomorrow. After that, I have no freaking clue.
But you don't time travel. That's one thing that Heidi and I talk about. My wife and I, we talk about, especially when you're feeling a little feisty and you say things like, not in a fun way, folks, in the I just want a reaction way, and you say something like, what was going on with that? And I call that the reheating, the microwave, right? Where it's like,
Yeah.
I'm just going to recook this. I was thinking about this, but you weren't thinking about this. So this has been getting my goat. So
Yeah.
I'm going to make sure that you're going through this with me, and she'll do it. I'll do it. I think we all do it. We're like, but we're not approaching it right. We're approaching it with ego. We're approaching it with some form of needing. It's about us.
Yeah.
And so I say no time traveling.
Well,
Right?
I mean, what you were saying about losing the ego thing is really important because the whole point of 12-step recovery is just to be of service. Be of service to the group, to the meeting, be of service to your friends, your family. That's what my friend Justin keeps telling me. Look, your mother is never going to change. She is who she's going to be. We say the serenity prayer
So
at the end of every
acceptance,
meeting.
yes.
Acceptance is a huge, radical acceptance. Radical. People are who they're going to be. You can't change them. You can only change one thing, and that is you. And that alone is a bitch. That is so hard to do. And like I said, I'm not going to have a sober relapse, not likely, but emotional relapse where I laid into the guy about the credit card problem. Yeah, that happens, and I have to apologize, and I have to forgive myself, and remember that this is the way my brain is wired. When people piss me off, my first thought is "F you," and that began with my dad. That began with my dad. That began in that episode where I'm like devastated by the death of John Lennon. He's like, yeah, well, he started the drug culture in this country. So
Which isn't even close to accurate.
it's not accurate. It's just insensitive to say that to me.
It's
my next
because
response
because you worshipped him.
I worship John. I love John.
Yeah.
I play guitar because of John. I sing John songs all day long. I mean, the guy, and my dad knew how much he meant to me.
It was a weapon.
It was just a weird dig, and my reaction was, go F yourself. And then I went off to smoke a bowl. But I'm trying to grow up, man. We're all trying to grow up. When you start drinking and using on a regular basis, you're like in arrested development. You're not growing up. And that's what the program does to try to, it's one thing to take away the drugs and alcohol. It's another to find tools in which to evolve and try to emotionally grow up. And that's why I still go to meetings, because I still have these issues.
Mm-hmm. And Adam, were there parts where you put something in the book, but you really were on the fence about it? Where you were like, I don't know, this might have ramifications.
Well, yeah, there's a lot of look. I have a plethora of material. Let me put it. It was an embarrassment of riches. This is why I hired an editor in New York, a freelance editor, a woman, to show me what we needed and what we didn't. I wanted to show that I had what the conflict was like with my dad, but I didn't show everything. It's not mommy dearest.
A lot of it's conflict with you, Adam. Like, so much of this is you tripping and you talking about your failures and again, Geekscape is, if you're into Star Trek, you're gonna like this book a lot. You're gonna love it. He talks about the rubber ears, but damn, this is you are the most human. Are you the most human in this? I mean, I have Neil, I have Abe Duenas, who he's in South Carolina, and thank you, Abe, for helping me out this morning, because I had posted that the show was going to start at 5 a.m. No, we're starting at 5 p.m. PST. And Abe texted me this morning and was like, did you get it right? And I was like, no, I had not. So he asked, was your dad affectionate? We've talked about that. He was not, but he says that he knows that Spock was deep down he loved. in that way, maybe your father mirrored Spock in that there was this
Oh
light
yeah.
in him that you just were starved for, that you knew you could plunder to the surface if you just find the right way to do it.
Well, yeah, okay, yeah. I mean, the fact is, I mean, my dad deep down, I think he did love me, of course. I
Yeah.
mean, yes. And there were times when, like, there was a letter that I talk about in the documentary for the Love of Spock. I also talk about it in the book. This letter that appeared that he wrote to me in 1973 when I was 17, after we had one of our knockdown drag out fights. He was very apologetic and processing it with me, but and then I got a note from him in 1982 when I was in law school that he was very proud of the work I was doing, because people would ask about me and he'd say, "Oh, well, Adam's in law school." I mean,
At
what,
Berkeley, no less.
yeah. Well, no, I was at law school at Loyola.
Loyola.
I was
Berkeley was
undergrad at
undergrad.
Berkeley.
Undergrad at Berkeley,
Yeah,
which is
yeah,
nothing to sniff about.
yeah.
Sneeze at.
No, no, no. I mean, it was a lot of work, and my dad felt good about saying that to people, that he was really proud of the work I was doing. But we got off of that path. This is the problem, and
Yeah.
we just and a lot of it had to do with his own career too, because again there were a lot of mishaps. I mean, I talk about in the book one of the lowest points in our relationship was when he was in Toronto making The Good Mother and drinking. It was a bummer movie. He's getting divorced from my mom, and it was very contentious, and he's still drinking. And those three were just a deadly combination. And I would call him up to see how he was doing, and he would just freaking lay into me,
Hmm.
you
He
know. And
needed somebody to lay into.
yeah, it wasn't about me.
Yeah.
It wasn't about me. It was about his own, what was going on in his own life. And I felt bad for him. I really did. I had a lot of empathy for my dad. I felt bad for him in that room, and when we went to the therapist's office, I just felt bad for him because the guy just didn't know what to do. He just didn't have that part of his brain was just not developed. He was much more in tune with how to succeed and how to work hard, and a lot of things that I admired. Frankly, his work ethic was amazing.
So, are you the most human in the title? You
No, I
know.
think I think for me, it's really about my dad. I'm humanizing him. I'm showing people that he has human failings just like the rest of us, even though he's adored by millions of people all over the world. It's not a competition. People say,
Sure.
"Oh, well, you were the bigger man. You reached out to your dad." I don't see it that way at all. I just got lucky and happened onto something. I had a friend of mine tell me, "Dude, go make the amends. Just shut the hell up and go do it.
Hmm.
This is for you as well
Yeah.
as him, but mostly for you." I was lucky that I found somebody, and I was working a program enough to know to take the action. We fake it until we make it. You do stuff sometimes that you don't really want to do, but in your mind it's the right thing to do, but in your heart you're just like, I don't want to do this. This is too scary. So it's not. We're both quite human, but as Kirk says about Spock, of all the souls he had encountered during his travels, Spock was the most human. The fact is, my dad was a very human individual. He had human failings, and all the great things about being human: aspirations, creativity, passion, spirituality. I mean, my dad had all this kind of stuff. He was a Renaissance man. He was an amazing human being, amazing. And if I were able to, when I became directing in TV, my mindset was, if I could do anything similar to him, I'll be happy. It was never a competition, never.
Well, I mean, Adam, I said in the intro that this, even as a book about old LA, you are placing us in these. I mean, the visuals. As a writer, I remember sitting in San Diego over the weekend with reading this book and I turned to Heidi and I was like, this guy describes. I mean, Geekscape is. I hope you don't think this is boring. I think as a writer, I think it's awesome. But the way you describe even just a living room, the way you place us in an era,
Yeah.
the details. I mean, and they just feel accurate to me. They just the T-shirt someone is wearing during an argument, the slippers they are wearing during an argument when they go out of the house, whether or not they're accurate or not, or some form of your recollection is. I mean, you write this book with so much confidence, and you put us there in such a visceral reality that as a writer, there were several times reading this book where I was like, damn, this guy's a good writer.
Oh, thank you. Well, yeah. I mean, I'm hoping there's some craft in there.
You go to the
I
writers' groups, you work on it. Yeah.
I went to the writers group. I hired a really good editor, when I hired that editor, I needed her to guide me about what was too much and what was not enough, about my relationship with my dad, what we should leave off the page
Hmm.
and what we needed to include and go deeper on. But I also asked her, I said, look, you got to help me. I want to be a better writer. I really want, I love writing. I published another book, many years ago. I've been keeping journals all my life. I have more stuff that I want to write. So I hope there's some craft in there. I do. I love editing. I love the editorial process. It's
I could
not,
see myself in the entryway of your family house in
yeah,
Westwood, and as
yeah,
it aged,
yeah,
as it went 20 years past where it should have been sold, as you say in the book, like yeah,
yeah,
I can smell it, I can feel it.
yeah.
This book puts you there, and I love it. And in Geekscape, it's sometimes you listen to the podcast and you're like, Jonathan's talking about this movie. I don't know if you liked this movie. Matt Kelly will email me afterwards, and he'll be like, "Hey man, was that movie really good? Because I watched the podcast, and you're being really, you're keeping a lot of praise and it's good in that. But like here, this is Matt Kelly. You should read this book. You guys should all read this book. I think it's incredible, and I'm not being facetious on any of it. I can't wait to finish it. And usually, like once you've been on the show, I don't need to finish the book. It's good.
Yeah,
But
you're good. You read
but
enough, and you got the
no,
energy
I've read
back.
half the book. I need to finish the rest of the book, and the reason I didn't finish the book was life got in the way. Sitting here with this baby moon.
Yeah.
Let's see. Sarai Trek over in South Carolina says, "I wanted the world to see him as human. I can't wait to read it. Any chance we get a biopic of your dad and you?" And I was going to ask a similar question. What about fictional narratives or going back towards the fictional stuff that
A
you were doing in
biopic.
TV?
Hey,
Maybe.
yeah. Hey, if someone wants to make the movie,
Oh no, he froze. Dang it. Every time he's going to answer a Geekscape his question, it hops. I think when Adam pops back, we got to say goodbye. This is too frustrating. But, Geekscape was we tested the audio, we tested the video, everything was good. And then the second the streaming started, every couple minutes, this thing hops. So I'm going to wait for Adam to reset it. We'll talk briefly and then we'll hop off. If you're listening to this on audio, you're probably going to be like, whoa, that's really frustrating, and it's all good. You're going to get a little more of a seamless experience. If you're watching this on YouTube, Twitch, or Facebook, my apologies. Sometimes the bandwidth on our guests, sometimes that stuff doesn't always work. But I love having you guys in the comments. I love how many people are watching this, and I think the conversation's really good. I appreciate you guys for listening and being a part of Geekscape. And damn, you guys have seen me through some life journeys. If this is your first Geekscape, though, hey, go back in the feed. You're gonna see some cool people. You're gonna see some great conversations. I try and bring one to you with every episode as we rocket towards Geekscape 700. But there's about 1,000 Geekscapes at this point because we include the panels, the live stuff that we do, the stuff that isn't quite a one-on-one conversation. Sometimes we do a special. We're going to do a special on the Acolyte. We're going to talk about stuff like that. But yeah, Geekscape's been so much fun. Let's see. Sarai Trek, yeah, he's in if somebody wants to make a movie. He'll go with that. I think I might actually write a not fan fiction story for my channel based on the relationship. This is Sarai Trek on Facebook. There's a Facebook page called Sarai Trek, Sarai, and I guess that's where you can start to find the fan fiction story for the channel there, based on their relationship. I don't know. That's pretty meta, man. Writing a fan fiction about a real life relationship of a Geekscape guest. There's levels to that, and it all starts with the Most Human book that's out in bookstores now. I know you can find it on Amazon. You can probably find it on Kindle and this and that. I definitely recommend it. Let's get Adam back. Let's wrap this up, and I hope you all aren't too frustrated by the whole thing of the technical difficulties, but we got some great stuff out of this conversation. I know I did. If you guys are in the chat, I know there's quite a few guys still watching, so feel free to throw up the comments from YouTube, Facebook, or Twitch. And if you guys are only listening, go back in the feed, listen to some more podcasts from Geekscape, go and share it with your friends. Tell them, hey, 5-star review this one. This is a pretty good episode, and this is a pretty good podcast. Next week we're going to be talking I think we're talking graphic novels next week. I think I have a graphic novelist on the podcast next week. And then, like I said, this is Geekscape 696. So Geekscape 700's coming. Whew, I guess I got to figure out when that's, I guess Heidi's giving birth on Geekscape 700. It kind of lands in the same window. Yeah, 4 episodes from now is Geekscape 700. And, that could be a big plan right there. No, I will not be live streaming my kid's birth. That being said, that gets in a pretty crunchy window there with the Geekscape 700. I think what I want to do is I want to bring a bunch of old Geekscape friends from the last 18 years onto the show, have them hang out. I'm saying this as I check my email for Adam to make sure he's okay. And we'll see. Nothing yet, but he'll pop back in. And Geekscape is Adam's back. We're still having some technical difficulties, Adam, but it's okay, dude. I was just going to ask, if you do a fictionalized or an adaptation of the book, are you going to play your father? Because the similarities are so uncanny.
No,
right?
One actor in the family was enough. Thank you.
Anything fictional was my question. Anything that you would write fictional and maybe adapt to the screen?
Not at the moment. I mean, my next book may be novelized. I don't know, or more memoir. We haven't figured that out yet.
Okay. Best place to find your stuff so that we don't risk.
AdamNimoy.com. Just go there. All my links are there. All my social media stuff is there. Announcements of book signings are there. All the events coming up are there. A lot of the reviews are in there.
Adam, if you're in San Diego for Comic-Con, would you come and maybe promote the book at the booth, the Geekscape booth?
I would definitely. You will see me there. Yes, I do plan to be there, and I would love to join up with you and promote the book. Yes, thank you.
Yeah, no, it's awesome. I just talked to a few people this week about lining up signings at the booth, promoting their material, and I'm excited to announce that in the next week or two, because Comic-Con is coming up fast.
Yeah.
And I hope to be there. If the baby's not here yet, I will be at San Diego at least for Wednesday preview night, and then it's Matt Kelly's booth, not mine. I'm going to be back here with a catcher's mitt. Here comes the baby. I don't know how it's done. You've done it twice, Adam. I don't know how it's done.
You're gonna figure it out. You'll figure it out.
Okay, well, brother, you gave me a lot to think about with this book about my own impending fatherhood, and I really appreciate it. Someone said, "Hey, this is one of the best Geekscapes yet," and I think a lot of it is your substantial remarks and your sincere responses. I really do appreciate it, Adam. AdamNimoy.com, Geekscape is where you can find out more about the book, the future works, etc., etc.
Very good.
Yeah, we're Geekscape. You can find Geekscape anywhere. Again, send this to your friends, let them know what's up. And we're here every week. So unless I'm on my baby moon, we're here every week. And next week, again, we talk graphic novels and more comics and things. So Geekscapists, thank you so much. Don't hate, create. And over and out. Adam, any closing thoughts?
Live long and prosper.